How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this week's Lumix Live. We are back in our normal, Thursday time slot at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'm happy to see everyone kind of getting back into the normal routine and joining us at our normal time slot. For the rest of the year, we're going to continue at our Thursday 2 p.m. time slot. So we're out of November. We're out of the kind of overlap with Photo Plus Plus. Even though that event is still going on. So if you are interested, we'll leave a link in the description for here to head over to the Photo Plus Plus platform. It's a little different than it was in November as it's moved, past the first month of the program. But like I said, we're coming back. We're continuing this platform now on our normal timing. If you are new to this Lumix Live kind of platform, this experience that we're setting up, welcome. If you're some of the people, which I can see from the chat already, I see a number of familiar names in there. Welcome back. But if you're new, this is our interactive platform that we use to have conversations with photographers, videographers, other industry members, whether it's people that work with me in Panasonic or even some outside people that work for other parts of the industry. For today's session, like the title kind of points out, this is our third edition of our kind of more formalized Ask Us Anything or Ask Me Anything kind of streams. Throughout this particular stream, we have a couple of things that we've been collecting over the last 2 weeks. For people that have questions ranging from, how to pick, do I use the Webcam software? Do I use the Lumix Tether software for live streaming, or even just getting into things like Zoom or YouTube like we're doing now? All the way into going into some detail with some videos that I have produced on the GH5, or not GH5, on the S5, S1H, and S1R firmware updates. Unfortunately, I didn't get my S1 video finished yet, but a lot of the stuff that I'm going to show you guys will be answering some of the questions about where the new features are in the menus, how to actually get to them, and what they kind of do. So we're going to go through a lot of that as well. I'm also going to show you a lot of new stuff that's involved with the Lumix Sync App, specifically around the S5 with the newer kind of updates that have come out and some of the new functionality that's available on the S5 platform. And as always, throughout this entire stream, we're taking questions live. So as a number of you are already doing in the chat, make sure to tag at Lumix Cameras before your question so that I can see it on the dashboard here and we can address what we can throughout the stream. We won't be able to get to all of the questions, but definitely drop them in there because aside from just doing these streams, a lot of our team will also be monitoring these questions even after we've finished the stream to add in, feature requests, things like that out to the teams in Japan which are responsible for this. So again, if you're new here, thanks for coming in. If you guys have been here for a while, thank you for coming back. Make sure to hit like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all that kind of fun stuff for these videos. It helps us out tremendously in being able to understand what you guys want to hear from. Now, the first kind of more official thing I want to drop in the chat here is we have a new email address that's set up for these kinds of streams and realistically any of the streams that we're doing. So we have a better way for you guys to be submitting questions that may involve more than just kind of plugging a camera in and running quickly through the menus. So that is now lumixlive at us.panasonic.com. I've just dropped that down into the chat. And feel free to send us your questions here. It's a one-way email address, so we aren't really responding back from this email. But once stuff is submitted in, it goes to myself and a couple other people, and we can monitor and see what kinds of questions you guys have for more involved answers, things like that. And what we're going to be doing from now on is with these AMA sessions, I'll try to put together some sort of, kind of guideline of what the general idea is that we're going to be talking about this week. So you guys have some insight as to whether or not this is a stream you want to catch live or it's a stream that you may want to catch later on, which will also timestamp in so that you can jump right to the things that are relevant to you. So let's take a look at some of these questions first before I jump into some of the kind of planned out things that I've got to talk about. And as always, sound off in the chat where you guys are joining us from. We love seeing, where everyone's coming from. You may find people in your local region through this chat that can be a great help to your content creations outside of just, sitting here online. So let's see here. One of the questions that I did see here was from Ulrich, which was, since the BGH1 got an improved AF, is it possible to get this in the GH5 too? That would make him happy while he waits for something like a GH6. One, I have no confirmation or information about any potential upgrade to the GH series as far as cameras go, but as far as the autofocus system goes, I don't know if it's something that's going to be able to be ported into the GH5, the original GH5. The hardware is different between the GH5, GH5S, and the BGH1. But know that we are typically really good at, if there is a way to bring some of these upgrades into the previous cameras, we usually try to do it. Unfortunately, that also comes along the lines of, we also don't really know when those kinds of updates could come. That's why, keeping subscribed to this channel, following in with emails if you're in different regions, to get onto those lists, that's where you would hear first. And then usually we would do something on this stream that would cover an update that comes out, like we're doing kind of today. So I know that's not the answer you're necessarily looking for. I would love if I had an answer for that, but unfortunately nothing clear at the moment. One of the other questions, will the G85 be updated to be used as a webcam? I wish it can be updated. Again, I'm not sure. There are hardware differences that have grown over the years between cameras. I know that the G100 did just get the firmware update to add it as a webcam. I know that's not obviously for your G85, but questions like that, we collect and we feed them into our team to kind of help guide what the next firmware update pushes are for what's possible, what might not be possible, that kind of thing. Rog's asking, what is next in the Lumix S Pro line of lenses? So we haven't announced anything in the S Pro series of lenses. For those that are new to the full frame system, the S Pro series is our top tier of the glass. So every brand typically has their kind of shining star series of lens, and then we have the, kind of everyday, just solid performing lenses. The only stuff that we've announced that's coming is the prime lenses that are going to be coming out alongside the 85mm, which should be shipping any day now, from my understanding, which would be a 35, 50, 85, I think 24? And I'll pull up the list. Maybe Jack in the chat can drop what the new lenses that we've announced that are coming out. And there's a 100 to 300 or 70 to 300 coming out as well. We don't have dates on those yet, but again, stay tuned and we'll be able to get you guys information on that stuff. Let's see here. A lot of questions there. Okay, so that's the G85 question again there. You guys see the email address in there. I'll drop it through the chat again later on as well. Let's see here. What's this question? S1R new firmware seems sharp in medium targets, ISO 6400. Okay, that's not really a question, Chaz. I guess it's just more of a statement. Let's see here. Todd's asking, would it be possible to add a feature to Face Detect AF that sets the aperture to get them all within depth of field in a group shot, similar to ADEP mode Canon uses to have for general work? I don't know. I've not actually worked with ADEP mode. I know ADEP is what, aperture dependency mode, where it tries to do that. It's a very interesting concept, and one that we will definitely bring up with the team to see if it's something that could be done. I'd imagine there's a lot of challenges there, especially with full frame cameras, where if you're trying to shoot, very stylistic and have that kind of control, you may run into some challenges with it picking the wrong depth of field in what you're trying to get a look out of. But yeah, that's definitely something we could take a look at. Albert's asking 240 FPS Slo-Mo possible on the S series. I don't know if it's possible. I know that we've got 120 in the cameras now, especially like with the S1H that has an actual dedicated 120 frames per second for 1080 filming. But again, comments like this, we end up piping into the team because they do watch these. They do monitor the chat and all the questions and comments you guys are putting up. So we would have to double check here. Okay, Chaz reorganized his comment here. S1R new firmware seems sharp. Should I set up different in lower light to gain sharpness at higher ISO versus higher shutter of lens stabilization? So with any high resolution camera, you run into a couple of things as you're going up in higher ISO. Since the S1R is my understanding of how that system works, it's a single ISO system. The higher the ISO goes, typically a couple things fall in suit with that. You lose a little bit of edge detail. You may, as you push into the extremes, you may get some color shifting. But with something like that, there's two things that I've done to overcome that. It's either if it's a scenario that I can shoot with slower shutter speeds to keep my ISO down, then that's a really easy way to build sharpness and keep your ISO down because you're not having the negative impacts of high ISO. Otherwise, you try to expose with a lot of cameras. You can work in a way where you expose for your highlights and then in software try to pull your shadows up a bit. It doesn't always work out the way you may want it to work out, especially with modern cameras. But that's one way to work. So I would suggest try playing around with shooting maybe a moderate ISO where the image out of the camera, and shoot RAW for this, the image out of the camera may look a little either contrasty or flat, like underexposed. But with that, you can usually put these files into something like Lightroom or Capture One or whatever program you use, and you can bring your shadows up fairly heavily with the S-series cameras across the board. I know the S5, the S1, and the S1H naturally excel at working this way. That's a lot of the way that I shoot for stills, so that I know my highlights are protected, because if you're new to digital, or you're not really new to digital, digital has no real forgiveness in highlight loss. Shadow detail you can pretty much pull out of the deepest, darkest parts of an image. So that's one of the things you can do here. Okay, so hopefully that set up there for you. Roger's asking, how do I activate the crop mode? So crop mode for video is what's possible. You would go in and select either Super 35 or APS-C, depending on the camera that you're in, is what it's going to label it as, or pixel to pixel. That's how you can get in and change the cropped area that you're using for video outside of full sensor width. Okay, so what I want to do now, and again, keep dropping your questions in, tag at Lumix Cameras. Myself and Jack will be answering these things throughout the session. But what we're going to do is jump over to my camera here. So this is my S5 that I have set up, and I'm actually connected into my Pixel device here. So I can show you guys some of the really cool things that have been added in with the firmware update and what the camera is now capable to do when you're using something like the mobile app. So this is the Lumix Sync App, and I have depth of field preview on here, so that's why you're seeing a lot of blur here. In previous cameras that we've had, actually I'll change back here for a second. In the previous cameras that we've had, the S1, S1R, and S1H included in this, there are certain functions that aren't available while you're working in the mobile app. And this is one of the things that a couple of us have been pushing to be able to have, if possible, added into some other cameras. But the S5 now adds the ability to control both your live view composite, high resolution shot mode, which some of the other cameras can do. But for time-lapse shooters, you can now actually use the mobile app to fully control your time-lapse functionality. So when we look at the camera here, you'll see that I have my camera set up as normal. It's in a standard single shot mode, nothing really too special there. So I've gone through the process, we're all connected. So now if I turn my camera to go into the time-lapse function, you're gonna get a couple of notifications here. So right now it gives you that comment that while you're attached with Wi-Fi, the power saving mode's disabled, things like that. But what's also interesting is that, so I have my camera set up here, plugged into an external power source, just using a simple little battery pack that I use for this camera. And what it now allows me to do is, now that I clear that menu here, you'll see that if I go into the settings, which is going to be the 3-button, the little kind of hamburger thing up here, I now have high resolution mode, I have HLG photo, I have all of the different kind of modes that I've wanted to be able to use on this camera while working remote. But the new one for the S5 is the time-lapse animation selection here. What this allows me to do is go in, change if I want to be doing a time-lapse or if I want to be doing a stop-motion animation for this, just like you do on the camera. But I can now also come in and I can set my start time, I can set my image count, as well as my interval. So what used to be, specifically with a lot of these cameras, what used to be a multi-step process to get the camera set up, you wouldn't be able to use the mobile device to actually trigger this time-lapse mode. This makes it super, super simple for those that are working where you may have the camera set out of, kind of normal, easy reach, so that you can get your time-lapse, you can monitor it on your phone, and you're not going to be hampered by some limitations because of the way the Wi-Fi signals may have worked. So we've got that system there. Some of the other cool things that have been added in with this is, obviously, if you've never used the mobile app before, there's a ton of control that you have with this for tons of different things that you can change. So we've also got that ability to change NTSC or PAL. We have all of the autofocus mode settings, everything that you can think of to change here, all your photo styles. And it basically tries to give you as close to an actual camera menu as you would normally have if you're not working with a mobile device. Now, some of the other cool things with the S5 is that if I come back in here, because I jumped back a little too far, some of the other cool things here is, obviously, you have your full access quick menu, so you've got all of the different functionality here to change your burst rate modes, your time-lapse modes, things like that. Like right now, it's telling me I'm in time-lapse, so if I jump this back to my standard mode here, back into single shot, camera operation in progress just means that I moved something on the camera, so it's got to resync everything. But under quick menu, you have all of the new color profiles are now available as well, so I can actively change all of this, which means I can go in and actually change. This is a little awkward to do it this way. I can go in now and select things like L Monochrome S, the new color profile we've added. I can come in here and I can add L Classic Neo, the other new color profile that we've added. So it ends up making a really, really solid platform for remote shooting in varying different areas. So let's see here. What was one of the other questions that I just saw come up here? Okay, these are actually just comments. Albert saying 240 Slo-Mo would be awesome. Yep, I agree. I would love to see 240 frame per second added if possible. Again, I don't know if it's really possible. Let's see. I see a number of people asking questions here, but not using the tag, so it's a little tough to see here. FC, here we go. So since the G9 does not have live composite, is it possible to simulate live composite using multiple exposure setting in the G9? I've tried doing it before. The problem with doing it with the multiple exposure modes that are in the cameras, which I can jump in and show on the S5 where that is. The multiple exposure mode, one, it's a bit of a not hacked way to do it. It is going to layer images over and over again, but you do have a limit of how many images you can layer over top of each other for it to save that image out. I've not run into what the actual limit is because I've stopped after, like 15 images. I think it was 15 images. A couple of images I've stopped and used it for more kind of artistic ways to create an image out of it. It's still not going to produce the same general effect because what happens with Live View Composite versus multi-exposure is Live View Composite is only doing an additive image every time you take a shot. So when you take one image, the next image that comes up, it's only adding the next brightest parts of the image, the new information per pixel. So when you do it the other way, it has some gain control where it'll try to balance the images out the best it can. But what's going to end up happening is you're going to have more like a traditional long exposure image where you're going to get ambient light is just going to continue to build across the entire image. So it can work for shorter type images like that with multi-exposure, but it's not really going to be the same. That is one of the reasons why myself and I know a couple of other people have been requesting that we can, if possible, to get Live View Composite in more cameras in the system other than the G100, the G95, and the S5. So hopefully that answered your question. Redbit's asking, with the new firmware, when I choose shutter angle of 180, filming at 24 frames per second, am I actually getting a 48th of a second shutter, or is it an approximation, example 1/50th? So when you're using shutter angle, you are getting the actual shutter angle. You are actually getting 180 degrees for that frame rate that you're in. So if you're shooting at 23.98, you're getting the actual like 1/48th-ish of a second. It's way more accurate than just kind of going 1/50th, 1/20th, that kind of thing. So it is definitely getting you the result. The truth of the matter is 1/50th to 1/48th, you're not really going to see much of a difference, truthfully. But where this comes way more into play is those situations where you may be jumping back and forth between 60p for slow motion content, 24p for your main runtime content. You're not having to remember to go in and change your shutter speeds back so you don't end up with an ultra staccato looking 24p piece of content, or vice versa. You don't look at a kind of slowish framed 60p content. Let's see here. Dwayne's asking, on the G85, you can shoot video in any mode, manual, aperture, shutter, priority, or program. What's the difference or advantage when using the video mode? So yes, with pretty much every camera, you can always just click the red button and it'll drop right in and start recording. You'll see that it'll crop into 16:9 and you can begin controlling. The biggest thing is that you are getting tons of advantages for different, color modes that you want to record in. That's where you can select, Cine D, Cine V. You'll typically have a lot more control over what resolution and frame rate you want to be shooting at, especially when you're in cameras like the S series. That's where you can select MOV versus MP4. It gives you a lot more control. It also changes some of the autofocus modes when you go into those the video modes. You have more control over the sensitivity and speed control that's available to be customized. So there's reasons to go into the actual creative video mode. If you're just filming just to be able to quickly grab a clip, just pressing the red button in whatever mode you're in is a nice, easy way to do this. Let's see here. King says, he was taking questions. I thought I would ask him. Skip my question. Let me double check where your question is, King. Did you tag at Lumix cameras in the question? King, if you are still there, make sure to tag at Lumix Cameras so I can see it. If I skip a question, I apologize. It's probably because I don't see it on my dashboard with the at Lumix Cameras tag here. I see one question you have here is, what is the best way to set up your S1 for sports photography using autofocus? I know there are many ways to set up autofocus, which is why you're asking. So, there are a couple different ways. Depending on what the sport you're photographing is, could determine which mode you want to go into. We do have a tracking mode, which on the S series of cameras will give you a center box that when you half press the button, it will lock and you're in continuous focus, and it'll enable tracking, so it will follow through the frame. The other typical way that's usually done is with either the grouped AF modes, which this camera's not set up for it, but the grouped AF mode, which gives you a couple different box areas that you can customize, like some of the older systems really were. So you can customize zones that you want to focus with when you're in continuous focus. You also have the ability, although now I'm getting an error that YouTube says that I'm getting a poor signal through here. So hopefully this isn't skipping. With the vast majority of people that I've worked with that are doing sports photography are typically using one area or one area plus if you're in an S series camera with continuous focus. We also have an entire PDF kind of playbook that's available that will allow you to, or gives you a couple of base kind of guidelines to set up the continuous autofocusing system. Since you have, for photography, you have a couple different sliders you can change around for selecting different sensitivities, different focus speeds, all for shifting that focus, for lack of a better way of describing it, for shifting how the focus system works. So hopefully that answers your question, if you're even still here. So let's see here. What are the other questions? Just as a reminder, if you have a question, make sure to tag at Lumix Cameras. Otherwise, I will miss the question. Let's see here. I have an S1 and I'm really impressed with its performance, but only thing I'm not super happy with is autofocus as expected with native lenses. Is there any fix that can be expected in the future? So I think it depends on what you're filming. The autofocus system, I use the autofocus for a vast majority of the work that I'm doing. In photography, it's stellar, especially with the new update that came from the S5 into the S1, S1R, and S1H. In video, I do a lot of talking head style video content, so like this, and the autofocus system has not failed me for this kind of stuff. So it really kind of depends on your style of filming. There are, again, resources for that playbook. Maybe, Jack, if you're able to grab the link for where that the AF playbook is, if you can drop it into the chat, and I'll make sure to add that to the video description as well. So once it's up, after we've done this stream, we'll make sure that it's added there. So let's jump into one of the other kind of canned things that we had here. So I've gotten a lot of questions on the email address that we've dropped there. Okay, cool. Thanks, Jack, for dropping that in. I've gotten a lot of questions about, okay, so there's all these new features in some of the different cameras, you know, the S1H with a number of the autofocus improvements and some of the changes in the menu there. Same with the S1R and the S5. So because we got those questions earlier, I was able to actually kind of put together a more concise way of doing it than this kind of live stream. So I'm going to jump over and play the S1H kind of key feature video that I created, and I'll be monitoring questions while we're playing this. So take a look at this. These are the features for the S1H with the new firmware and where to find them. Now that we're looking at my S1H, you'll see that we're here in the standard basic standby mode. Now, to change and take advantage of those new AF modes that have been added to this camera, you're going to click on the AF selector on the back of the camera. Once this menu is opened, you'll see that there are two new options under One Area Plus and One Area AF modes. To enable these, select which one you want to use, and press up on the directional pad to toggle between human detection or human and animal detection. Once you've selected the one you want, press the Set button. Another addition to the S1H with the version 2.2 firmware is the ability to toggle the horizontal image flip and vertical image flip for those that are using the free angle portion of the rear monitor swung out into the different positions that you can use it at. Now, to get into these settings, you're going to press Menu. You're going to go to the Cog menu, into Monitor Display Photo, and this is page 1, and then go to LVF Monitor Display Set. Click Menu Set, and you'll see you have the options now here for auto, on, or off when it comes to horizontal and vertical image flip. The horizontal and vertical image flip functionality on the camera now means that when you have the screen facing forward or out at a vertical angle, you're able to tell the camera to ignore the image flip that naturally happens when you start rotating the screen. This becomes incredibly useful for those that want to tilt the rear screen out, rotate the screen forward to be able to monitor yourself on the camera, but not have the screen automatically flip upside down. All you do is toggle that vertical switch to be off, and now I can rotate this screen out from this position and tilt the screen forward so that I can see it while still having the image facing the proper way up. So yeah, as you see there's a lot of really cool things that have come into there, and not all of them I'd say are the kind of big high-end features that everyone may be thinking of on a daily basis, but the ability with like the S1H to have it where you can tell it to not be automatically flipping the screen is one of those kind of smaller things that at least I know in my studio environment here, where I've got my S1H set up sometimes as opposed to the BGH1 that I'm using now. When I have the screen pulled back and rotated out so that I can have my HDMI cable, my constant power plugged into the USB, I don't have to worry about, is the screen going to be upside down and am I going to have to be dealing with that? So that last feature is one that was brought over to the G100, to the S5 as well, since those three cameras have fully articulating screens. A lot of the other stuff, when we look at the one area AF with the face and eye detection, for a lot of users that are, which is kind of a recap of what I just showed in that video, is that when you have the camera set up and say you're doing something like this, where I want to be able to show a product in front of me here, like a lot of the YouTube YouTube review channels have been doing. This now allows you to have it on face detection so that when there's no product and there's nothing up between you and the camera, it's going to stay on the face. Otherwise, you can pop something up in the frame and have it view there. Let's see here. FC, going back to some of the questions here. Redbit's asking, you should dedicate an episode to deep dive in AF settings. I think many users will benefit seeing some of the examples more than reading a manual. I've thought about trying to do a live stream on basically taking the AF guidebook and turning it into a video kind of platform. There's some logistics involved in it. Obviously, in this environment, 3/4 of the stuff that we would talk about, it's very hard to demonstrate here. So if anything, it would be a pre-recorded session. But it is something that I've looked at. So if it's something I can get done, maybe in the new year, we'll be able to do something like that. But yeah, it is something that I've looked at wanting to do for this. FC is asking, is it possible to capture time-lapse video using Live View Composite as it's capturing? Not sure I'm following, or maybe I am following and it's just a different way. So you could theoretically use time-lapse to create the base images you need to do a Live View Composite. You would be going back to working in something like Photoshop or Affinity, from what I've been told, for stacking, just like you would do star trails. you could theoretically do that. You would still have to do some masking and stuff like that to, protect the foreground if you don't want the exposure bloom that would happen by just natively stacking and working that way. But the using a time-lapse function is one of the ways that you could do it. The only thing that you could potentially run into with something like that is if you're trying to shoot a fast enough set of images, so a very short duration between all your images, you could run into some challenges with buffers filling up in pretty much any camera, because at that point you're constantly just feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding. That's where something like the S1 or the S1R that's using the CF Express cards could be a better benefit there for it. Just because the buffers are typically greater with the CF Express cards. But yeah, it's possible. Bob Sanders asking, a 600mm L mount? Not that I'm aware of, but take a look at the L Mount Alliance. There's a ton of lenses available out there from Leica, Panasonic, and Sigma as well for it. FC Photos asking an example of light painting using live view composite. Example light painting using live view composite time lapse. I think you just broke my brain. I think I understand it a bit, but yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. Time lapse would be the base for most of that. Mixing live view composite would be a little interesting with that. I don't know if that's something that's even doable in existing camera tech. So I want to jump over and show the next kind of feature set was actually specifically for those S1R users. I know we've got a couple of them in here in the chat. It's one of my, kind of more favorite cameras when I need that ultra high resolution for my landscape shooting. And for those that don't know, we added a very sizable video addition into that camera. So let's jump over, take a look at the S1R features, where you can find some of these settings and what you need to change to be able to work with them. And then we'll come back and we'll answer some more questions. Now that I'm here on my Lumix S1R, when I click the Menu Set button, you'll now see that I have the ability to change the rec file format to MOV for the additional new 5K video format. You'll see that when the camera is set to NTSC, I have the ability to select 5K, 10-bit in 30p or 24p, or when I change the camera to PAL, I have the ability to now select 5K, 25p. With this update, the Lumix S5 is now also capable of utilizing the shutter speed gain operation, which allows you to select angle and ISO, or seconds and decibels, for the different ways that you want to read out your shutter speed and ISO combinations for different filming applications. You'll see that this allows you to select things like 180 degrees to stay on angle, depending on the frame rate that you choose. The Lumix S1R has also received a new color profile to support 10-bit video recording for HDR output with this update. When you select into the quick menu, you'll see you now have the option for HLG 2100 when you're working in the MOV and 5K video recording formats. To also align with a more professional video workflow, the Lumix S1R now also supports 4K 10-bit 422 output over HDMI when selecting in the menu, HDMI rec output, and changing 4K 60p bit mode to 422 10-bit. Now to note, when this option is selected, the camera will only send the video feed out over HDMI and disables the internal camera recording. All right. So as you can see, there's a lot of new things added for the S1R, specifically that 5K recording mode, which as you've noticed is not a 16:9 aspect ratio. It is a 5K video recording function. And one of the questions that we actually got over email, and actually I saw again earlier today over on the Facebook groups, was the questions regarding that HLG color profile for that camera. Since the S1R does not support Vlog color profile, so that logarithmic file we have for the S1, S1H, and the S5, this hybrid log gamma, it's hybrid log gamma, it's Rec 2100, So this is going to allow you to record and take the maximum advantage of the color space available in the 10-bit functionality that you get in MOV while using the S1R in 5K mode. If you've shot with HLG before, it is a gradable file, so you can work with it. But HLG originally is kind of more designed as a deliverable color profile. Hybrid log gamma, if you shoot a piece of content using HLG, and this is for any of the cameras that support it that we have. For one, they are to the specification. They are 420 10-bit recording modes. You can tell some of the cameras to shoot in 422 10-bit and still select hybrid log gamma as your color profile there. Or in some of the cameras, you just change it to HEVC mode and you're able to record and demonstrate or use that footage there. But what it was originally kind of designed for was being able to take that piece of content, put it directly on a television or a compatible piece of software, and it will automatically recognize that this is HDR-ready content. But at the same time, be able to put it on a standard dynamic range television that doesn't maybe necessarily comply with, HDR10 or HLG. It allows you to be able to play the same piece of content and have the color space and the dynamic range mapped properly for that display that you're on. It's one of the ways, it's actually a lot of the ways that content that you may see being streamed out for movies and TV, stuff like that, is able to be played simultaneously in HDR or standard dynamic range on either your mobile device, which might not have the HDR compatibility, and then also play it on your HDR TV here. It's here. Chaz is asking, please add links to these new videos in the main text comment at left so we don't need to search chat for these videos are great. So at the moment, I don't have these videos posted anywhere where they're going to be public. But what will happen is on the update for this, at least in the meantime, until we can get them, finished and uploaded somewhere, I will make sure that the description has them added as timestamps in the description for this video on upload. So you'll be able to go to this video, click on the timestamp, and it'll play that video, bring you right to that point. So, yeah. One of the things you notice is that with the S1R, it also doesn't have that horizontal vertical auto flip functionality since it's a triaxial screen on this camera. So obviously that's something that wasn't added into it. But with the S1R, it now does become a much more viable platform for someone who needs that ultra high resolution stills content for it. Christopher Moore is asking video, enough already. So yeah, look, a lot of our cameras, a lot of our kind of flexing capability is with video. We have a ton of stills functionalities built into a lot of the cameras. If there is something specific that you want me to cover, Christopher, drop it down in the chat. That's one of the things with this stream is that it's built based on what you guys are asking us for. I can talk, I primarily prefer photography over videography anyway, but videography is usually where we get most of the questions. So if you have a question, drop it in there and we can, kind of follow up on it there. Eddie's asking, for Micro Four Thirds users, can we expect a GH6 soon? I don't have any answers for you. We did just release the BGH1, which arguably is a more specific style of camera, especially for broadcast things like this. But keep following a lot of these channels. Our YouTube channel over on, get in with the emails. You'll get updates when new cameras come out. So I don't have an answer for you on any new products coming out. Roger's asking, when using the Tether app for Windows, it doesn't scale well on your Surface Pro laptop. The text is so small. Desktop with a 2560 by 1440 monitor. So the scaling thing, I do understand, and it is one of the things that a couple of us have brought up to some of the engineers because of the difference in all of the different monitor sizes and the scaling, and whether or not Windows or Mac is going to take care of the scaling. So I do appreciate you bringing this up because it is something that we have asked about, which actually is going to segue right into one of the other questions that we get fairly common for some of this stuff is, what is the main difference between using our Lumix Tether software versus using something like the Webcam utility? And one of the things actually that we're going to jump in here is, so I'm over here on my other computer here, and one of the things that we get kind of confusing a lot, and part of it's because of the naming that we've chosen for some of our different apps that have come out, is looking at the different tethering options that you have. So I'm going to try to demystify some of it and give you kind of an idea of what to use and where. If you're someone who is a studio photographer or a video content creator, so in this case I have my BGH1 attached, so I have this camera set up for all my control here. So if you're someone who needs to be able to have a camera set up and control it remotely and get that content off the camera to your computer, that's where you're going to use any of the Tether programs on the computer themselves. So that's going to give us all of this kind of control here, all the photo style control, the frame rate control, all of that kind of stuff. It allows you to be able to select destinations of where you want to actually have those files saved out in, which I realize I don't have my camera on. So this allows you to be able to immediately save content off the camera to your computer for stills and for video. The video files can take a little bit longer to transfer, obviously, because they're much larger. But if you've got it connected over USB-C, which most of the cameras that are working with Lumix Tether are set up for, that's where you're going to really primarily use this software. Now, we have two primary pieces of this software. We have Lumix Tether for Multicam, which is the one that you're looking at here. This is strictly currently just for the BGH1. This is where I can click on camera. If I have multiple cameras set up in my studio, I can control all of them, hit record, trigger recording on all the cameras, and I'm able to individually pull content down from each camera recording when it's done recording. So if I have this main camera set up and I click record, I get my red light that I'm recording. When I click stop, it allows me to process and say, hey, we want to send this file over to your computer, and I can click yes, and that content's there. It's the same for still shooting. If I were to set this camera up and actually put the BGH1 into the photography mode, I can take a bunch of stills and have them save out to my file. So it allows you to have that kind of control. But if you're someone who's doing webcam style work, so like what we're doing here, where I've got the camera and I just want to broadcast out for either YouTube, I want to be in meetings, things like that, that's where you're going to use the Lumix Webcam software. It's not really a software, it's a driver that just gets installed on either your Mac or your Windows, and all that does is allow you to connect over USB, pull the camera up in the feed, and you're able to actually start using it as a webcam. This is probably the most common misconception between them, is so use webcam software for webcam utilities and applications, use Tether for camera control, things like that. A note for a couple of the people that I have actually interacted with on this is that if you are using the webcam software and the Tether software for cameras that are capable of using both, you can only be using one at any individual time. Right now, the way it's set up, the video feed that's coming out is either going to go through the webcam driver or it's going to go through the Tether software. So if you're using something like OBS, typically what I'll do is I'll set my cameras up the way I want it, close the Tether software, and then just open OBS as a video capture device, and the camera populates in and you're set up there. Let's see here. Take a look at a couple more of the questions here. Roberto's comment and kind of question here is, focus by wire system is terrible for video. Is there some hardware limitation on Micro Four Thirds cameras lenses preventing linear operation of the focus ring? I don't know if the Micro Four Thirds cameras have any kind of issue there with the way they were designed. I know in the S-series cameras, they do have the ability to do linear focus throws, and you can change the throw degrees for manual focusing with it. And a number of Micro Four Thirds lenses have focus clutches, which shift the actual whole control system so that it allows you to be able to cycle through and have measurement marks or registration marks. It's something that we've brought up. So again, thanks for dropping the comment in there. We will definitely take a look and see if it's something that can be set up there. Let's see, what other kind of questions here? This isn't Lumix specific, but around stills, do you know where I can get RW2 or DNG printed at 10-bit or greater instead of JPEGs, which are only 8-bit? And that question's from Keith. That's fully going to depend on the print houses that you're looking at. I use a lot of our kind of dealer network for my printing. We have a dealer here in Austin, Texas that I've used for getting some prints made before. I've had some other prints made from services like White House Custom Color, from DeGaulle in New York. You would want to check all the different platforms. That's an area where you definitely probably want to do it over the phone instead of an email or a chat kind of system to see if you can do printing at greater than 8-bit. I know there are some printers that can do it, but I honestly haven't seen much positive, or not positive. I haven't seen any clear information for myself that I would be able to pass on to you. Cliff is asking, any rough idea on the S1 2.0 firmware, Q1 of 2021, question mark? Early next year. The press release that we put out, that's got the most up-to-date information on it. So, sorry, Cliff. All right, the last video we got here is probably the one that I get hands down the most questions about, is with the S5. So the S5 received a number of updates for things like ProRes RAW over HDMI, and I'm going to touch on that after I play this quick video here. But let's take a look at the S5 and show you where in the menu all of these new kind of settings are for the camera. And we'll come back. Remember to drop the questions in with tagging @LumixCameras, and we'll be able to come back and answer some more of them. Taking a look at the menu here on the Lumix S5, we're going to first show you where to actually set the 10-bit output options for the 4K and Cinema 4K 60p. You'll do this by going to the cog menu, in and out options, going into HDMI rec output, and changing 4K 60p bit mode to 422 10-bit. This option allows 10-bit video signal in 4K and Cinema 4K 60p over HDMI while disabling the internal recording at the same time. For those that want to take advantage of the ProRes RAW over HDMI functionality, we're going to go into the camera menu, go into the image format number 2, and enable HDMI RAW data output. Once this is enabled, the camera will now be able to record ProRes RAW footage out to an Atomos Ninja 5. Continuing along with the video improvements for the Lumix S5, when we go into the menu and take a look at Image Quality 1, you'll see that you now have the option for the shutter speed gain operation. This menu selection will allow you to change from seconds to ISO, into angle and ISO, for those that are changing frame rates often and want to maintain the proper shutter angle. For those that want to take advantage of the Cinema 4K functionality in the Lumix S5, you'll start by clicking on Menu Options, go into Image Format 1, set your rec file format to MOV, and finally go to Rec Quality and select up to Cinema 4K 60p with 10-bit support up to 30p. Now for those that want to utilize Cinema 4K 60p with 10-bit capabilities, you'll need to send this content out over HDMI into a compatible recorder. For those working in a more advanced situation, You now also have the ability to select master pedestal level for matching the black levels to additional cameras. You'll find this under the menu option, image quality 1, and master pedestal level. An additional improvement for those that are working on getting the most accurate colors out of this camera is the vector scope option. You'll find vector scope under the menu set button, monitor display for video, then scroll down to select waveform vector scope. You'll now have the option to select either your waveform or your vector scope. Now last but not least, for the photographers, you now have the ability to also select 2 additional color profiles, L Classic Neo and L Monochrome S. The easiest way to find these is by clicking on the Quick Menu button under the photo styles and scroll to select L Classic N, or keep moving forward to select L Monochrome S. So yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of new things also added in with the S5. One of the questions that we get a lot is around what HDMI cables you need for ProRes RAW. And again, ProRes RAW, for those that aren't necessarily following up with it, it is the RAW format recording that we can do over HDMI to the Atomos Ninja 5. With this, it gives you the ability to shift your white balance, your change your ISO after the fact, and alter your exposure settings primarily with Final Cut Pro currently. There is compatibility in Adobe Premiere as well, and some other programs like Assimilate, which can give you some control there. Some of them are in varying levels of support and functionality, so work with the one that kind of works best with you. Right now, Final Cut Pro is probably the most feature-rich one to work with ProRes RAW, but that kind of makes sense since ProRes RAW is an Apple-based codec. So, but going in with the HDMI cables, we get a lot of questions of, what cables do you need? I've worked with a number of customers through troubleshooting on getting the camera all set up, and then you may have flickering or some other kind of connectivity issues. So the important thing is that with HDMI cables, and I have 2 of them here to kind of show some of the differences. So this is the cable I use for my S1H. This is an 18 gigabit rated cable. So a lot of people go online and you may see, well, this HDMI cable is rated HDMI 2.1 or HDMI 2.0 and things like that. Truth is, a lot of times those descriptions that are being used on cables don't really mean much. There's a range in certain classifications, whether it's 2.0, 1.4, 2.1, whatever the rating would be. So there's not always a lot that that specification is going to tell you. What you really want to look for is the actual gigabit rating on the cable. So this cable here, this is an 18 gigabit rated cable, and you notice it's a pretty thick, heavy-duty cable. It's also short, so for my S1H, it's great. I'm not worrying about a huge coil of cable around there. They do make some right angle ones that you can take a look at as well, but most importantly, make sure it's rated for 18 gigabit. Now for the S5, since that camera uses a micro HDMI cable, this is the cable I've been using. It's a hyper thin cable. This one, to my knowledge, is rated at 10.1 or something gigabit. So not that full 18 gigabit, but it's been working well with my S5 for ProRes RAW HQ throughput. So if you need thin and ultra light cables, these are nice because they put very little stress on the port themselves. It goes right into full size, so you're not worrying about any kind of converter like I have set up on the S5 right now. So yeah, I recommend these cables personally. That's not a company recommendation, but these are the ones I'm using. So hopefully that answers that question there for you. So we're at the hour mark here. I want to address the one question actually from Albert. Actually, yeah, the two questions from Albert here is, could you get Adam Pretty to do a Lumix Live? I am looking into it. I would love to see someone like Adam Petty on here, Pretty on here. Can't speak today. Well, I can speak, but yeah. So we can look into seeing about if he can get in there. Albert also asked, will the videos that I was showing, will they be uploaded separately? Eventually. In the meantime, I'm going to have them timestamped in this video until I can get them finished and polished and put up for actual viewing as their own standalone videos. Let's see here. The last question I'm going to take here was from Llama Steve. I know you've asked a lot of questions, and I don't think I've answered well, I've answered some of the questions, but I don't think I've really answered too many of them. USB 4 is the new standard. Okay, that's a comment on a camera that doesn't even exist. So, yeah. Fortunately, yeah, there's nothing that we have on the new stuff there. All right. So, as a reminder, with these streams, we do these streams typically once every month near the end. So we're looking and, going through the comments that you guys have for questions that maybe we didn't get to answer, questions that are maybe more in-depth, that involve more time to actually answer and set up and get you guys the correct information. So for those that have joined throughout the stream, we have a new email address here for you guys to submit questions for this stream. It's lumixlive@us.panasonic.com. That goes to myself and a couple other people so that we can be more refining this stream, more refining the content that we're providing out to you guys based on what the market wants to learn, what you guys want to see us do. We have gotten already a number of emails from there, and I know that I did not answer everyone's questions that have been submitted, but that's why we're collecting them in one place, so I can go through them, create an actual production off of the questions you guys have, and get you guys more useful information during these streams. As always, we will be continuing to do questions live during these, but most importantly, we're going to be back here again next Thursday at 2 p.m. for a bit of a different stream than this kind of AMA session. I am going to be joined by Matt Frazier next week on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for an entire stream about anamorphic. And I have a couple of these anamorphic lenses here for the Micro Four Thirds system that I'm going to be using on the BGH1. These are the Surui, I think I pronounced that right, Surui anamorphic lenses. So these are 133X anamorphic lenses, and Matt's got some PL anamorphic lenses. So if you've been interested in anamorphic, what it is, how it works, what options you guys can do, join us next week, Thursday at 2 p.m., and we'll be talking all about anamorphic. So with that, I want to thank everybody for taking the time. Thank you guys for all the questions and the comments and the chat back and forth that you guys have. It's good to be back here on Thursday. A little rusty in the execution of today's stream, so I apologize for that. But we'll be back at it again Thursday next week at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all that kind of fun junk that you do on YouTube. It helps us out, and it'll keep you informed when we have new streams and new information coming. So with that, I'll see you all next week, and hope you guys all have a good rest of your week. Take care. Bye.